something stupid, are you going to be fixing that?
If you say what?
We say something stupid, is it going to be like cut out or is it live?
It depends. I am not going live on this.
Okay, good.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to record and then Ben will probably do some posts afterwards. Specifically for the actual like podcast, we're on all the podcast places, but then there's also the YouTube channel that we've been doing lately. What's funny is Ben and I have been doing it so much that we rarely actually have to go through and like, oh, Ben, do you want to see Priscilla? It's been forever. Did you already say hi?
Hi, Ben.
Isn't it weird to see us like old? It's weird.
You guys look the same. So I don't know about you. You look exactly the same and you act exactly the same with each other too.
I know.
I've listened to some of your podcasts.
Oh, like, have you been listening?
Yeah. I'm like, you guys are still the same. It's so cute.
We have fun doing the podcast. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start it and like officially. Oh, I got booted. Connection is weird. I'm not sure what's happening. Okay. Just join whenever. We can always do this again. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go. All right. So you ready? Okay. Welcome everybody to the Tessa Van Wade Show. We are here and we are going to talk about some really good stuff. I have, we were going to have more people, but we've been having a little bit tough connection with everybody. So, but what I wanted to do is a podcast, talking about, women's stuff. So Ben's not allowed. even though he's here, he's not listening on the earphones. But so we have Lisa and we have Priscilla so far. Oop, I got somebody else that's coming in. We're going to try and get them in as well. And while we try to get them in, I'm going to have let's just go ahead and introduce ourselves. And I'm going to have you guys just kind of give a little bit of a clip of your name, who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of get into why we're doing the podcast. Who wants to go first? Lisa, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Lisa.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
Hi.
I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur, or as some people would say, a serial entrepreneur. I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't creating a business out of something I like. So I currently run like 3 different businesses and substitute teach on the side because I was a former art teacher. So I do a little bit of everything.
Okay. I love that. I mean, serial entrepreneur, I can definitely back for sure. All right, Priscilla, you.
Awesome. Yeah. So for me, my name is Priscilla Rose, and for work, I get to work with individuals and organizations and really help them think about the future. So most of the companies I work with are trying to make that generational transfer from generation 1 to 2. So then I'll get to help them do like that strategic planning, and then also like training their leaders and managers so that they can really take on the company. So it's a lot of fun. It's all about the future and creating like for individuals what they want and being able to really see that and then act on it. And then for organizations too. So it's really fun.
That is cool.
Never a dull moment.
I bet. Well, especially dealing with that many people. So let me ask you this, like, when you think about like what you're doing now and everything like that, and being a serial entrepreneur and working with businesses and like that, was that anything that you like thought you would be doing like when you were a kid? And feel free
for me, no.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, and that's part of, for me, is like, I never really saw something that I really wanted to do. So I wasn't one of those like visionaries, which is actually why I do a lot of like vision work with individuals and organizations. Some of them are like me. They're like, didn't have that picture of like, what do I really want to be doing? So I didn't have that at all. So I kind of fell into it. Like many people, I fell into doing this like when I was in grad school. working with organizations, and then really got hooked. Was like, oh my goodness, this makes such a difference. And
Yeah.
started to see for myself, like, oh, this is what I could really do with myself that might, be purposeful and make a positive contribution. And so I just kept going that way. So that's for me. I
That's
don't know
cool.
about the other ladies
Really
here.
quick, Lisa, before you go, Andrea, do we have you working?
I think so.
Yay! Yes, we can totally hear you. Well, really quick, Andrea, see if you feel free to tell them even where you're at. So why it's a little bit more difficult and all of that to get you on it. But I would love to hear about you because I actually don't know you. We've just kind of we connected on Facebook for this podcast, and I'm so stoked.
Yeah, me too. Is there somebody else before me though? I'll let somebody else go.
No, so
Yep.
what we are already, everybody's already kind of introduced themselves. I've got Priscilla and I've got Lisa, and you're Andrea. And so they've kind of just shared who they are and what they do for a living.
Okay, I walked in, I came into hearing Priscilla, what she was saying, which is pretty super awesome.
Yeah.
That's where everything was starting to function for me, like the headphones, the internet, the
Oh,
quality.
good. Good.
Yeah. So I am I'm from Guatemala. So I'm back home in Guatemala for the first time in 8 years. So
Wow.
even though it is a third world country, it is super technologically advanced, more than I remembered. But my phone was having issues because I cracked my phone when I came here.
Oh no.
Receiving the signal, so I had to switch phones. And it all of a sudden started raining and thundering too. So I think that's why I was kind of having a little bit of issues. But yeah, the last time we were here was 8 years ago, and then it's been interesting this time.
I hear a little kid yelling in the background. Is that somebody for you?
Yeah, my kids, and they're actually pretty far away. There's just like these houses are really echo friendly.
That's how they are in Hawaii, you know?
Yeah, and so
Nothing's
we moved to
ever closed
Hawaii 8 years ago.
Oh,
and that's
okay.
I found, and somehow I started following you on social media, and that's how we are connected. And that's when I saw your post. I was like,
that's awesome. That's awesome. So how long are you in Guatemala for?
We have been here for a month, and we're here for one more month, or 25 days or something like that.
Okay. Does it reach where you're like, okay, I've had enough, like I'm ready to go back, or are you just like super soaked in and like are loving it?
I think I'm ready to go home just because it's very different, and we kind of have our lifestyle, and right now it's kind of different to find that here when you're in short term, like where to go buy your stuff, and it's changed a lot since the last time. And even though produce is so abundant, it's really now full of pesticides, and the farming has changed, and there's this whole other scene that I'm seeing through a different lens because of who I am now. And so that's kind of harsh. So we're kind of ready to go back home. And at the same time, I'm diving really deep into some, roots there that I didn't see before and I never had before.
Gotcha.
So that part is, I'm like, I don't want to leave that yet, but I think we're all kind of ready to go home in a way. Family, it's been nice. It's been beautiful to see them again.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to have our own space back. And I miss a lot of the work that I normally do, and I'm kind of feeling like I missed that more than anything else.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. A
lot of what I do is I work as a birth doula, and I run young girl circles for help prepare your young girls for their menstruation, so that they know. None of us had that. Most of us just got thrown into that part of our womanhood without knowing what the heck was up. And so create a safe space for the girls to be able to learn, ask questions, and know that it's completely normal, and create a safe sisterhood around that. And also bond with their moms and moms of other girls is really important for us as women to have that from the beginning,
That is amazing.
So that's mostly what I'm doing. And I also try to run circles for moms of young girls, in case you are the mom of a young girl and you want to have a different relationship with your daughter, and you don't want her to experience maybe what you experienced, but you still have your own things that you have to work through.
Yeah.
And right before I left, I ran a circle for moms of young boys.
Oh, very cool.
Our side, I have 2 boys. So what our role is as a mother, and the female role
Yeah.
in the boy life, you know, especially once they hit puberty. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much what I'm in right now.
That's super cool. That's amazing. Well, welcome, Andrea. I'm super excited to have you. So that, like, everything you do is like perfect, because I feel like I'll introduce myself a little bit. You guys obviously know me a little bit, but my big reason for doing this podcast in general was honestly just because I have a passion for just women in general, and just like all the different ways that we kind of can stand in our power, and all of the different ways that we like, because I think that all of us kind of get to this place where as we get older, I think, you know, high school, junior high, we're all so insecure. We're also not knowing who we are and all of that kind of stuff. You know, a lot of cattiness between women can happen. A lot of competitiveness between women can happen. You can see it as you get older, right? We can see it as we get older. However, it starts to be less and less, I think. And I think that a lot of us women start to kind of create this, like, wait a minute, like, why am I working against you? Like, this is not something that is going to benefit my life in any way, shape, or form. And we start to recognize the beauty and the growth in women. And I wanted us all to be able to kind of bring together that support and kind of talk about what that means and everything like that. So I'm super stoked that you guys are here, but let's go back. So what we were doing was Priscilla kind of, the question I asked was, when you were a kid, is what you're doing now, anything you thought that you would be doing? So Lisa, go for it.
Yes and no. I
Okay.
always wanted to be an art teacher from the time I was a little girl, that and a National Geographic photographer. So,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've been doing family photography and child photography for 23 years. And I taught high school art for 6 years, and I teach summer art courses. So
Okay.
I'm doing all those things just in a different way than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I'm thinking about moving back into that. So yeah, I mean, at the base of what I do, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. How about you, Andrea?
Maybe in a way, I always wanted to be like a mystic and live in the woods with a cottage. That was really always my dream. I never had anything else other than that. So I think I've achieved part of that because we live, you know, off grid in Hawaii. And I guess a lot of the first world is very mysticky, very magical. And so maybe in a way, I didn't feel like I was going to end up doing a little bit of what I am doing. Maybe not exactly like I am. But yeah.
I feel like right now I want to live as a mystic in the woods. Like I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh, give me the mystic life in the woods where I don't really have to talk to anybody and I could just be with God and nature and you know, all that kind of stuff. But no, I totally get it. I hear you. That's funny. I did not think I was going to be doing what I'm doing right now at all, like in the slightest. I don't even think I knew that like with the gym and owning a gym and stuff like that here in Hawaii, I was not interested in fitness as a kid. I was the heavy girl. I was super lazy. So like if you had asked me when I was a kid, no, but one thing I have always wanted to do was I always wanted to tell stories. So on the book sense and being a writer, and an author, yeah, that is something that I definitely connected to as a kid, you know, and kind of continued to do so. And so like, it was funny because I was thinking about that question and my other sense went to, so, okay, so here's the question. Here's the next question is, when you were a child, like if you could, because Lisa, you said art, you know, that kind of thing. But like when you were a kid, if you could do anything you darn well please, I'm guessing yours is going to be that you would be a National Geographic photographer.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was from starting, that was your dream. That was like the dream above all dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Priscilla, what about you? The dream above all dreams.
Well, I remember
it's okay to say you don't have it because guess what? Ben says he never has dreams.
I didn't dream what during the day or like I didn't imagine who I'd be with or my wedding or anything. Like I was so, like kind of just like going from thing to thing. And that is part of my story, and then part of like what I connect to other people about, that's like people that maybe don't have that. Cause I really didn't. I was just, in a military trained, home. It's like you're just doing like
Yeah.
anything outside of that, of like doing what I'm supposed to be doing, following the rules, all of that, like really wasn't available to me. So I didn't. I remember one time though, when I was young, I was like, I thought that being a cashier at Kmart would be like the penultimate. I really did, because I could talk to people all day. I could work with money.
That's
That was
hilarious.
That was my dream. That was as big as it got for me.
You're so cute, Priscilla. I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh. Andrea, what about you?
I think I actually wanted to work in the library. I just wanted to be surrounded by books. You do you remember that Disney movie, The Beauty and the Beast, where she like has this ladder and she goes from all the top books up?
Yes.
That's what I always thought being a grown up to me would be. I'm like, I can have a library and I can help people and I can go up to the top one and slide in my ladder to the next book. Librarian. Like I really just wanted to be surrounded by books and go through them all the time. I think
That is
actually
so
it was
fun.
like one of that last generations before internet really kicked in. So you still could go to the library and have to find your book with like, those drawers where you had to like
Oh yeah,
find
the card catalog.
Catalog.
I'm like, I could help people find their book by opening all these drawers. It'd be so much fun.
That's so funny. The reason I asked that is because it's so interesting and unique to kind of hear what everybody thought as a kid, and like whether our parents like encouraged us in huge dreams and huge passion, or like, the nature versus nurture kind of thing, whether it was in us to kind of have these huge dreams and stuff. I'm married to a guy who kind of, we've actually talked about it in past podcasts of I sometimes wonder, because he feels like he's never had a lot of huge dreams. And I sometimes wonder, like, does that have more to do with like your upbringing and like maybe possibly just having it squelched instead of like blossomed and all of that kind of stuff. And so I don't really know, like maybe there are just some people that, the dreams happen as they come, versus like being the dreamer sitting in your room and kind of being like, what, because I was definitely the dreamer for sure.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for some people it's more naturally, and it is nurtured.
Yes.
Like, but I know for me, it's like, and what I found is like, we all like have that imaginary, like that muscle of imagination. Like, I mean, you see like kids, right? The 4-year-olds, they're like, I mean, they don't know the difference between what's real and what they're just like creating. So like, but when you get into school, it starts to get squelched oftentimes, of like, then you're told what to learn and what is possible and what's not.
Yeah.
So that's what I found, like when I work with a lot of people, that it's a spectrum of, and that we all have this muscle. It is really possible to dream bigger. Like when I did this visioning exercise in grad school, it wasn't until I was like almost 30 that I did this visioning exercise. I had no idea that these dreams, these things, ideas and things that I wanted were in my head. I had no idea.
Oh, how funny.
Until I was almost 30. I'm so mad.
What was the thing you did? What did you do?
So I did this visioning exercise, or a whole program called Strategic Futuring. And Ray, you probably remember him from grad school. He facilitated for me, but not till I moved to Boston. So it was after grad school and first year in Boston. I was really depressed because I couldn't find a job. It was like in the recession, like starting the recession, couldn't find a job. And I was like really miserable. And then he's like, well, as a part of starting consulting with him, he had all of us do this visioning program called Strategic Futuring, and where we had to look 20 years in the future of what our life would look like. We did all this stuff, like getting connected with who we are, some of those like questions that we always ask, like, who am I? What am I going to do with who I am? And then we went to the future. Like there's a lot of steps, but he had worked with a futurist
Yeah.
that was actually helping the UN envision a non-nuclear world, like envision peace. And she was always saying, she's like, if we can't see peace, we really can't create peace.
Wow.
She's like, we're all like, everybody wants peace, right? World peace, right? But we're
Mhm.
planning for war.
Mhm.
We can't really see what peace looks like. So she said that's true for us as individuals too. So then
I
did
heard
this-
a,
yeah,
you
go
did?
ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I heard a podcast the other day that was very similar. And this woman is, I'll have to find her name and maybe put it in the information. But she was just talking about, she is like part of the rest culture. She's like believing that we don't rest enough as a humanity and all of that kind of stuff. But one
I
thing
think
that
I saw that.
really, one
Yeah.
thing she said that was really interesting was she specifically said she was talking about how like we as a country need to reimagine the way that we do things. And she talked about how in the beginning, when the country was being formed, at the very beginning with the founding fathers, right? Like they sat down and they imagined what they could find or what it could look like. So why can't we do that again? And the problem is that it takes imagination and it takes sitting down and kind of imagining what we could create, and how it could be different. We are so set in our ways of doing things here, this, that, it's about sitting back down and having that imagination, I just thought that was super interesting. Kind of goes along with what you're.
Yeah. And it really takes like kind of suspending what we know and then going and being like, okay, what do we really want to create? So a lot of artists are really great at doing that. And there's a great methodology. And it was just shocking to me what I saw, because I imagined myself running a business and being a published author and like having it like being an international speaker and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I had no idea I even wanted any of those things. And then I saw it and I like fell in love with what I saw.
Yeah.
And now it's like, that's what I'm living. Like,
Oh my gosh. That is
Anyway.
awesome. I love that. Well, let's let that lead us a little bit and go into what kind of this podcast was a little bit more entailed to, is that part of like, for example, like I definitely had my dreams and I've had my passions and I've had all of that and everything. And I do tend to be a very big dreamer. My biggest thing is like when I was, throughout my life, I was born into a conservative, family, for conservative Christian family and all of this kind of stuff. And one of the things that was constantly like, was constantly a thing in my life that I was constantly taught is the whole idea that I was supposed to be very subservient and I was supposed to be very submissive and I was supposed to be all of these things. And unfortunately, with my dreamer mentality, I found that the two collided in my brain. I was constantly struggling with this idea that, okay, well, this man is supposed to be the spiritual leader of your house and you're supposed to be led by, like, a lot of it was like man here, right? Man on this platform. And then here's me. And I need to make sure to, and that's how I envisioned it. I had very specific things taught to me when I was a kid about that I definitely know guided that. But then also in connection with my personality of being a rule follower, like, Priscilla said, like being a rule follower and wanting to do everything right, kind of having that perfectionist idea in my soul, and everything that made, man, I've spent so much of my life colliding. And luckily, like the two different parts of me, I wanted to have big things and I wanted to dream big, but I'm supposed to be small and I'm supposed to be delicate and I'm supposed to be weak and I'm supposed to let these people lead. None of that. I was battling and I've still battle to this day. And so there's places where I've found my power, right? Like, and I say, and I want to, you know, preface by I say, because I sent you ladies questions, and I sent 3 questions. And the first question was, as a woman, where do you feel you have learned to stand in your power, and where is it difficult for you to stand in your power? And the reason I even came up with that was because these are the 2 things that have been colliding in me since I was young, which is I'm not supposed to be powerful. I'm supposed to be like helping you. And in a way, it was just this weird, how do I get out of this? You know? And yet then I would have these places like, okay, so I wanted to become a personal trainer, and then I started getting busier, and then I created a gym, and then I did this. So I had these weird places where I'd be like, screw it. I'm just going to go big and do it. And like, I'm going to write these books, and I'm going to go get them published, and I'm going to do it. But what's crazy is the anxiety that I was constantly having in my soul the entire time. Like I literally had to battle that anxiety because I was going against everything I thought that I was supposed to be, which was small and quiet. And then so marketing myself was like, what? You know, like, no, I can't do that.
You have to be humble.
You have to be humble. My dad was a huge one on my dad never gave compliments ever. And he told my mom, he said, no, because I do not want them to grow conceited. Now, my dad was a great man. He was a very calm, quiet, very loving man, but he was very big on not letting us have compliments and keeping us, you know, we want to not be, you know. What's funny is Ben always cracks up because he goes, well, it never worked with your brothers because they were always super like into themselves. And then I love my brother's going to listen to this and be like, what? And whatever. But for me, as the daughter and the only daughter, I needed a daddy's approval. And I found that was a huge factor in this whole thing. So when just over the last couple of years to stand in my power, I actually had to write my dad a letter and say like, I need to be big. And my dad passed in 2004. And so I wrote him a letter posthumously, right? Is that what the word is? Posthumously. And said, I need you to allow me to be big and be okay with that, you know? So anyway, so let's just kind of go into that idea. Like if anything that I said sparked something that you've gone through, feel free. And, you know, whenever the green is on you, that's when that's when you're the one that's the loudest. So go for it. Anybody?
Well, if it's okay, I feel like a lot of what you said is something I resonated with, right? Like, I think the hardest thing for many of us women figure out where we feel okay standing in our power comes with a lot of boundaries that we've been holding as women, right? And so when I work with women that are trying to reconnect with their menstrual cycle, that's like my first questions are very similar to these 2 questions. And it's like, what did you, like, how did you view women before you had your first menstruation? And how do you view women now? Because it's such a big difference, right? Like what we thought being a woman was, and now that we are women, we have a completely different lens of what we want to do.
Yeah.
And so I feel like also like so much of that, there's a lot of spiritual work, but a lot of that is so deeply connected to our mother and her lack of power is where we find that we want to break that the most. So if our mothers had to be even more submissive and more okay than we were, then we really want to break through that. Because in a very spiritual sense, that time in the womb that we spent with her was really, we were just tapping into everything that she was trying to resist, but she couldn't verbally say, but she felt it. So we felt it. So then here we come and we try to become that. We try to embody her like natural dreams of, I wish I could be a woman that could say this. Yeah. And then you have mothers that are so different and like opposite than the mother because we felt that connection. And as women, we're like, oh, well, I think really in my heart, in my soul, I desire to not be like this. And we tap into that frequency. So it's like super strong. And for me, I feel like, you know, Guatemala is a very Catholic country. Yeah. And like even without being back here, I'm like feeling it strongly because I'm like, oh, I walk with the same power and confidence that I do anywhere. But there's certain energies that I'm like, oh, I think I'm being looked at like, what's wrong with me? Right?
Yeah.
Like there's something wrong with me. When I'm like, no, there's something wrong with y'all. Because
Yeah.
nobody should, like, I shouldn't have to like change the way I walk up and ask for this because I'm a woman.
Right.
So it's really interesting, but I feel like the hardest part for me was, I think we're kind of all in the same with that boundary of where do I get to just say that this is what I want to do.
Right. Right.
Like, once I get to say, okay, because like, I grew up, really also thinking that women are of service. We are here to be of service for everyone else. And then maybe when there's time at the end of the day for yourself.
Yep.
So now I see most women as, we are trying to be women that are of service to ourselves first, so that we can actually be a proper service to everyone else without feeling resentment at the end of the day towards yourself, your life, or anyone else. And so I feel like that is probably where at the very beginning I had a hard time accepting that I was a big part of, like, I also should get to do this, and I also should get to sleep well, and I also get to have some time to myself, because the more I do that, the more calm of a mother I am.
Right.
And the happier I am at the end of the day. And I've also, like, it's really hard to stand in your power when you don't feel like the people around you are in that same mindset.
Yes.
And that's what I feel like I found the hardest part. And I'm actually thankful now that I'm here. I realized that I had to leave to find that power.
Yes.
To now be able to come back and actually be in it and say, no, your energy is funky, but I can still stand in my power right now. Yes. With the way I'm dressing, with what I believe, with what I'm saying, no, we're not going to do that. And so it's kind of, they go so closely together that it's hard to know which one is what.
Yep. Well, there were a couple of really cool things that I took from what you just said, Andrea, that I really hadn't even I mean, I've thought about it, but that was really big. Like, number one, my mom was always very, very insecure about her body. And, we grew up, very conservative. So you weren't supposed to show your body. We weren't supposed to even, connect with our body. And that was a huge deal for me, because I learned to be I couldn't, as a child, differentiate between shame of my body and and then also, and like modesty. Like it was really difficult to kind of find that balance. And then the second thing that I thought that the thing that I thought was interesting that you said was, talking about going back to Guatemala and just being surrounded by these people, the people that you used to be surrounded with all the time. And I think about, like, as a child, being surrounded by all, going to church every week and going to, and being surrounded by the same people with the same ideas, with the same thoughts and all of that stuff. It wasn't until I broke out of that a little bit that I started to recognize the absolute and complete beauty in a woman's uniqueness, and not just in her in general, but her uniqueness, like my uniqueness from Lisa, and Priscilla's uniqueness from Andrea. And like how the fact that a lot of us women sometimes get into that weakness a little bit, or the difference a little bit between each woman, and we kind of start judging it, right? Instead of just going, no, like, let me help you stand in that power a little bit rather. And so it's like group mentality, right? We all believe in the same thing. We're all living the same way. We're all living the same walk, we're all doing that. But then also, like, kind of like, where can we stand in our power by just being uniquely me, Anybody else have anything for that?
I mean, I think having a daughter, and I know you have two girls, at one point, I think my daughter is about to turn 14, and at about 10 years old, I really started thinking, I'm like, what do I want for her? What do I want her to see? I'm like, I have spent my entire life serving the career of my husband. I mean, he is in the military. He would be TDY deployed 6 months out of the year, a lot. Like, it was a lot where I was trying to build a career, and then we'd move. Yeah. And then I'd build a career and we'd move. And then again and again and again, while raising children and doing all these things. And, going back to that idea of, yes, I had these amazing dreams of being this National Geographic photographer. And I do remember we had somebody come in, and it was this photographer that did like portraits and things, but he's like, you know, you have to remember that those people travel a lot and it's very difficult to have a family. And I was like, oh. So in my mind, you know, as a person who always wanted children, I was like, okay, so I don't get to have both. And for a long time, I didn't realize that you could have both, you know, and it wasn't until my daughter started hitting those like pre-teenage that I thought, I want her to have all of it. Cause she goes, you know, I don't know if I want to have kids because it's really hard work and I have things I want to do. I mean, she's like, I want to be an astronaut and the president and a scientist and, you know, and I'm like, she wants to be Barbie. That's what she says all the time. I want to be Barbie because she's done it all and I want to do it all too. And I'm like, I want her to feel that she has the power to do it. I want her to be like, yeah, I want 10 kids and I'm having a career and I'm going to have, you know, this, and this. But I think that in that female, like the way our society sort of sees it, and I feel like it's changing, but slowly, but that we were seen as that supportive role. So we could have dreams, but they had to balance somewhere with the whole, well, my husband is the head of the household. I need to support his career, his dreams, his goals, you know, and take care of the family. And then if I have time for my cute little businesses, then I could do that. Right. You know, and now that I have an adult child and a 14-year-old and we are no longer in the military, I feel like all of a sudden, oh, I have 500 dreams a week of things, businesses I want to start. Ask my husband, it gets old. It's bad. I'm like, I had the best idea, you know, 2 hours trying to sleep at night. And guess what? You know, and so, right.
I'm right there with you.
I'm at that age now. I'm like, I'm in my 40s. I'm like, oh, my kids are going to be grown. And my husband has a different career. He doesn't need my, like, oh, I get to have these dreams. I get to have these things. I just wish that I had noticed that I wasn't allowing myself to have them before. Yeah. And I didn't realize it, you know, and now that I look back, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't want that for her. I want her to know early, you know, be like, these are my dreams. I'm going to do it. It is okay to want big things.
It is. Yeah, totally. Priscilla, you got anything for that?
Yeah, just the conversation is so rich. And so thank you, ladies, for sharing. It's just, as I think about these things a lot, and just one thing that you said, Lisa, is like that idea that we can't have it all and that we have these like particular roles. Like, I mean, that was very strong in my upbringing of like, you know, conservatism and but I see something that got me like out of it and like and seeing that other people can get freed up from that too is like that going out, like getting like suspending all the things that we, you know and have been imposed on us. It's like if we can really get free of that and then look at, okay, what does it really look like to me living in the world, living out my purpose? Like a lot of times we think, oh, we really can do it all, you know, and really healthily, and it doesn't have to diminish other people, you know, and so being able to see that, like what that really looks like has been so freeing for me. And one other thing that you said that I thought I would mention is when you said, you know, you have a daughter. I don't, but I see in businesses a lot of times the practices change in the business when the managers or, you know, CEOs or leaders have a daughter.
Right.
Their practices, like they become more conscious. What would I really want for my daughter? Like, wouldn't I want her to have the same pay as a man? I actually remember teaching in like a college class, and you know, there was one young guy, and he was like, I want my wife to be able to make the same money I do. Like, why should, like, you know, he didn't want to be able, he saw it as like, hey, if we're going to have a 2 household income, I want her to be making the same amount of money that I can. Like, so it was just, I was like, this guy is ahead of his time.
Totally.
You know, thinking about it that way is like, what do you really want for
mother?
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Because because you will find the opposite for sure. You will find many that are the opposite. So it's almost like when you find somebody that kind of sits in that aura, kind of sits in that energy, like of like wanting to not only support women, but literally like help them start seeing that they can climb and that they can fly. You know, that's that, those, because I don't know about anybody else, but it wasn't like I went, oh, this is exactly why I'm having anxiety, or this is, it's not that I knew. I mean, I had to literally, I had to be like, why does succeeding make me feel so uncomfortable? Like it just makes me so uncomfortable. It was like a burden on my soul. And I just, it really came out when I got my first book published, and I was suddenly going to have to like market myself. And Ben can testify, I was miserable, like, because I just, to tell people to go buy something that I had written. And even though it had taken me years to write these books and lots of work and lots of all this, I was like, it's okay. You can buy your, you know,
like who people think I am, you
yeah,
know? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. It's hard.
Well, and here's another thing is, you know, beyond how we were raised with like either being a conservative or being in a conservative area, like beyond that, it's interesting because I think that going into, let's go back into the role that other women have played in this for me, because, or for you guys, because I do think that growing up, the competitive nature, the jealousy that can pop up, all of that, that was always really just heartbreaking for me, getting older, you know, like, in elementary school, and then getting into it as a teenager, you know, dealing with, you know, other girls in high school that were like, they automatically didn't like you for some reason of what you were good at or what you weren't, or, you know, whatever. Yeah. And so I feel like,
with that now.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally. And we understand, as older women, we understand now, like, that it really comes from a state of insecurity, and it really comes from a state of fear, you know, that I'm not going to be that. And so I can't be that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to attack it, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, like, it's kind of amazing. I look back on some of the experiences I had, you know, in high school or whatever, even older, with women, and like, you know, those women that were hard on me, that was a big, I'm going to pull back, and I'm not going to share anything. Like, this is no, because I want them to like me. I don't want them to be against me. And it feels like, you know, being a serial entrepreneur, or what, you know, wanting to climb, sometimes can, you know, you can get that response from other women. Do you guys feel like that?
I do.
Yeah.
Especially as somebody who is a serial entrepreneur, and they're like, well, did your last business fail? No, actually it was really successful, but I got tired of it, so I moved on.
Right.
Or it's so busy that I can't juggle 5 jobs at one time, so I just moved on.
Yeah.
I have ADHD, so I get bored with them, and I'm like, let's find something else, you know. But
I need challenges. Yeah, I need challenges, right? So like, I need to move on every, you know, 10 years or so at least.
Yeah,
you know?
but the judgment is there. And I know it is because I've seen it. I mean, in groups, like even like on Facebook and things, where people are like, oh, I can't believe this person is doing this. I mean, look at them. Why can we not just be like, look at them? Like,
right.
What are they doing that I'm not? Maybe I can like see what they're doing and I can up my game. Like, I don't see it as competition. And I used to. I can remember in my 30s, I was like, and I want to be like them. I want to do like them. And I'm like, must be nice. It must be nice because I worked hard. And so I was like, okay, what can I do to up my game so that people can also be like, hey, look at what she's doing, you know? But at the same time, I don't want people to look at me and be like, hey, what is she doing? Because it gives me anxiety. I don't like judgment.
I'm right there. I totally get it. Andrea, do you have something?
Yeah, no, I feel like at that age, right, that teenager age, where it's like such a big change, hormonally speaking, happening. And this is why I get involved with the young girls, because the more they understand what's happening at a biological, anatomical level with their hormones, the more they understand the emotions coming through, and then the fact that what's changing throughout the month is the perspective that we see things with. Like the thing itself is the same. It's just us, we're viewing it differently. But a lot of what happens, as I realized, is, you know, that coming of age, when you like go from being a child to becoming an adult, for both boys and girls, but especially girls, it's such an important rite of passage that when it's not, like when you're not initiated with a healthy sisterhood, it all becomes competition of like, why is she prettier than me? Why does she have that and I don't have it? And then we create this competition rather than making it. What happens, like, to me now as a woman is I don't see it as competition. I see it as inspiration. I'm like, wow, that's inspiring what they're doing.
Yep.
And so a lot of what I like to try to promote to the girls is that we're all here with very different qualities, and that a lot of it is to see inspiring. Like if you see somebody that's really confident, it's not to like bash them down so that they're not confident anymore because you're not that confident. Instead of thinking, how is she that confident and how do I get myself to be that confident, you know? And maybe going and talking to the confident girl a little bit more, going and talking to the girl that's doing the things that you like more, you know. But so much of it is just, I feel like, a lack of sacredness in welcoming womanhood, you know. And a lot of it is, how did you, you know, like, what was your experience with older women when you were that age? And if you saw those women judge each other or gossip of each other, then you thought,
absolutely,
what we come into. And then we kind of repel it, right? We try to not be a grown-up woman for a little bit longer because I don't want to be, you know, bad mouthing everyone because they're doing that and I'm stuck here in my house. Yeah. And so it's like all these things that go into the competition sense that we see from other generations, that we also try to like resist, to try not to become, and then either eventually we become it without knowing that we had a different option, or we get looked at differently because we're like, why are you not trying to do, like, why are you not competing with that girl? Or like, and it really, it's like at that teenager, the hormones are such a turmoil, that it's so easy to get caught up in it. And quite honestly, like the media is just feeding it as well. It like makes so much more money of us not being secure, of us thinking that we need to change how we look and that we are what we dress in or like what we have. They make so much money off of it that, you know, they would never try. Like if you look at any teenager movie, all the characters are exactly portraying that. So we all were fed that visually, and then we just embodied it. And then when you grow up, you're like, there's got to be more to life than me, like, you know, talking bad about this. Like, there's got to be more to life than me, like, always trying to compete with other women.
Totally.
And so, yeah, it's such a beautiful stage for all of us that have children, whether it's a young girl or a young boy, knowing that walking into adulthood has to be done differently with a different lens to stop that competitiveness, so that they don't have to kind of like do the same thing that we have had to try to, you know, figure out by ourselves for years. You know, it took us like until our 30s, most of us didn't realize that we didn't have to compete with other women.
Right. Yeah. Well, because we deal with it so much as when we're young. And sometimes I think there's a little bit of us that we don't, a lot of times and especially with close relationships, we a lot of times don't allow people to grow in our minds. Right. So, you know, somebody who hurt me 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 25 years ago, they're still kind of somewhat that way in my mind. Right. They're no longer there. Right. We don't, even though I know how much I've grown. And I know when I started to like recognize the power of women, and I started to go, okay, you are a badass, you are a badass, you are a badass. And I actually want to talk to you about that because I think it's amazing. And the thing is I built my business, the especially the gym here. I built it with the idea that these trainers would come in, these women would come in and they would support each other, and that there could not be a competitive bone. Everybody that comes in, any trainer that comes in and wants to work here, I'm always like, okay, so the very first day that we get together, I look at them and I say, if you tend to be very competitive with other people, this might not be the place for you. So, you know, and just recognize that there's plenty to go around, and we're here to support each other, and we're here to lift each other up. And I do not allow drama, and I do not allow talking bad about others. And there's always a way to communicate if you have a problem with somebody, in a very kind and a very uplifting way, you know? And so that's kind of, I think in our minds, a lot of times we don't allow people to grow up. And I think that a lot of us women get to a point at a certain age, whether we have children or not, it doesn't matter. It really comes down to no matter what we are doing in our life, whether we decided to be a family, a mom, whether we decided to be a CEO, whether, whatever, that we did reach that point where we're like, okay, if I can actually connect to this woman and hold her hand as we go up together, So Priscilla, anything on that?
Yeah, I'm loving the conversation because I feel like a lot of this stuff is just, it's not talked about. I feel like that's what I remember a lot in my upbringing. I grew up with 3 sisters and, and 2 younger brothers. So, so there's definitely like a lot of dynamics with that. Not necessarily tons of competitiveness between us, but trying to prove something like to my dad that we were worthy of existing in some like that we had value according to what he saw, because he was like president of the board, like on the school board and things. And so I remember just that that dynamic. And then also when I did share about like what I saw myself doing, I remember my oldest sister, who I'm actually really close with, she was like, I don't see that.
Oh,
and I remember like it really was heartbreaking for me. I was like, well, this is what I see. Like, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I'm so grateful I had other people that I shared with. It's like almost like that seedling of a dream of what I could be, like who I and how I could contribute was it was almost like in I don't want to say like harsh terrain, but you don't want to like expose it to the elements too quickly. So I did have other places, other people that nurtured that, but it was really interesting. And I didn't take it too too seriously. Like, okay, well, she doesn't see it, but it kind of hurt a little bit. But I did go forward, and then I saw that I really was playing small and not talking about any of the things that I was really dealing with. And that was something that was very taught, is like, there's all these things that are happening. And Andrea, like kind of you're talking about is like all these these changes and everything that's happening. And there really just wasn't a place to talk about that, or like, to really navigate any of that until much later when I started. Now I feel like I have really, really, really supportive women in my life. And like, I don't get any of the like, I don't feel like it's competition and stuff, but it was definitely.
I think we do kind of, I think there's a big, strong, the reason I even wanted to go into this is because I think there's a big, strong push now for women to back each other and women to be for each other. I'm loving it. And let's ride the wave and let's really talk about it so we can communicate how we could even be more effective in that. Right. And it's interesting because thinking back to, just a couple of little ideas to kind of throw out there is like when I was a kid, for example, the kind of things that made me feel small or think I needed to be small if you heard them like separately or, one by one, you probably wouldn't even think, why would that make you feel like you need to be small? But if you actually put it all to collectively, it was just a breeding ground for me to question everything that I was doing when it got any attention whatsoever. And so it's interesting because I remember I had a couple of very religious zealots in my life, like quite a few religious zealots in my family, at the church I went to and things like that. So little things like, for example, I remember very vividly sitting down with someone very close to me, and me saying what I wanted to do. And their response was, oh, well, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to wait to talk to your husband, because whoever you marry, yeah, that may not be the life that they want for you, And I'm like, oh, okay, or, just the idea of like, oh, we lost Andrea. Oh, good. You're back. Oh, good. Or just the idea that like, I remember it was a big deal about, my, just the fact that it was always a woman's fault, right? About like how you dress and the way that being a huge factor. That was always, always huge in my life. I
Right.
remember one time being at youth group, and did this person come up to me and talk to me about this? No, this person came up to my brother, and they said, this was a man about 22 years old, came up to my brother, and who was a little bit older than me. I'm like 15 years old. I'm heavier. Like I'm a thicker girl. At 15, I have plenty of boobs at 15. And he comes up to my brother and he says, hey, you need to tell your sister that she's not allowed to wear that shirt anymore. And what it was it was a white, you guys are going to laugh, I was wearing like suit pants, and it was a white button-up shirt. But we all know what happens with big boobs and white button-up shirts. Like right in the middle. And I would try so hard to like scooch my boobs back and like keep them all small so that it wouldn't do it. But I remember my brother coming up to me afterwards and going, hey, they've asked that you not wear this shirt anymore. And I remember what's funny is, because of my growing up in that arena, I didn't think twice about it. But as I'm getting older and I'm recognizing my kids, like, and the what they're doing and how they're growing, I'm going, I do not want to. No, like, live your life, have your body, do your thing. If you don't want to look, don't look. But like, let me be me, and don't embarrass me by telling me I can't wear a shirt. Do you get what
I
I'm
had
saying?
horrible posture most of my life because I've been a double D since the fourth grade.
Yeah.
And I was constantly told I was slutty because I had boobs. I had woman's body on like an 11-year-old, it was traumatizing as a kid.
Yeah.
And I was
guessing,
always
Andrea,
told
you
to
had that
cover
too
it.
because you raised your hand. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Andrea, did you have something for that?
No, I mean, there's so much that, I feel like we all have to experience at some point with like having to feel like we were in the wrong just because we were trying to be ourselves. Even though I had a very supportive father, and actually my dad was always like, nope, you're equal as a man, and there's nobody here.
I love that.
But he was a rare thing, and so that's still interesting, because now I look and I'm like, wait, this is still the same. Like, it's still the same. You're still looking at me like, as a woman and as a mom, I should still be a little different. Yeah. But you'll still fantasize with the girl that you're putting up there in the advertisement. So wait, you're telling me to be like her, but when I try to be like her, you tell me, wait, you can't be like her. That is not okay. That's a really, really interesting thing.
Otherwise,
I'm going to take some strong men.
That was what my mom said. Like, don't wear that. I don't think I wore a skirt till I was like, I don't know. If you even remember me wearing dresses, I don't think I did. I wore things 2 sizes too big, because my mom would always be like, well, you can't wear anything revealing, otherwise you will make a man stumble.
Right. I do remember that about you, Priscilla. I do.
It's so interesting because when we were younger, we lived in the United States for a bit because my dad was working there, and my sister, who's 6 years older than me, would come back sometimes from school. She was in elementary school, and the days that she would wear a skirt, she'd come back crying and say, there's this boy that keeps on trying to pull my skirt up at school. And so my mom was like, well, you have to tell the teacher. And my sister would be like, I already told her. Well, you have to tell the principal. Well, I already told the teacher to tell the principal, and blah, 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 and nobody's listening. So my mom was like, well, then maybe just start, just don't take the skirt. And my dad wasn't part of the conversation. He was like, no, you're going to take a skirt tomorrow, and if he does it, you're going to punch him right in the nose. And my mom was like, yeah, she shouldn't be doing that anyway. the next day they got a call from school. They go to the principal's office and they're sitting there, right? So we're this Latin family.
I
And
love
the
this.
principal kind of talked to my parents, and he's like, you know, your daughter punched somebody in the nose. And my mom was almost like, she was already infuriated. She already knew what had happened. And my dad was like, okay. And
Yeah.
and the principal was like, the problem is that she's saying that you, Mr. Gonzalez, told her to do it. And he's like, yeah, I did. She said she told the teacher. She said she told the kid. She said you knew, and nobody was doing anything. So I told her to go ahead and punch him in the face. And
Totally.
my mom was upset. But after that had happened, the principal couldn't say anything. They were like, okay, well, maybe next time we should talk more about it. And he's like, no, maybe you should tell people to listen to each other. A girl
Yeah.
can wear a skirt. Like, I don't have to tell my daughter she cannot come to school with a skirt because somebody else is not listening. She's either going to listen or she's going to have to do something about it.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because, you know, even in that, it's like, you know, my sister was at wrong for hitting him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like
Yes.
it's such a
Yes.
vicious cycle of like what we're doing wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, you know, I have another situation. I have quite a few of these situations, but another situation where I had somebody in my family, they said that you're not like when you're playing and you're running around the house. I mean, you guys can hear, what does it sound like when there's a bunch of kids playing and running around the house? It sounds like people are screaming, people are yelling, like they're going crazy, all of that. I was told that, that I shouldn't bring my voice to a certain level because that level sparks something in a male that gives them a problem or whatever. So those are the kind of things that it's like, you know, it really informed me, you know, it really like informed who I was. And like, I went, oh God, okay, I shouldn't do these. So what is that? That's just, it's an element of control, you know, it's an element of control. I totally see, Andrea, that you have to go. No worries. We went a little farther, but Andrea, you were beautiful in this conversation. I really love it. And I want to do this again. Like, I actually feel like we had a bunch to talk about that we, you know, really didn't get to talk about. We're going to go, Lisa and Priscilla, we'll keep going for just a few more minutes and I'll wrap up and everything. But I would really love to do more of this with you guys.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you. And it's been great to meet you, Lisa and Priscilla. And you know, the conversation is so great.
Yeah.
You know, there's something somewhere along, and that's what I'm going to leave with. Like, we're talking about something, and I just wanted to share a thought that came through of like, you know, the problem when there's like this, you know, male figure running so much of our life, not just in our households, but like country-wise and state-wise and school-wise and throughout the whole thing, is that, you know, we're told that in a very masculine way, we just have to do something and stick to it. You know, as a very male, you kind of think of the male as a sperm biologically. What they have one task to do and they'll follow through. And then you think of us as an ovum, as an egg, and we're like nurturing and cyclical, you know, and that's where we get caught. Like, we can't do something for always because by nature, women are cyclical. We're meant to do this for a little bit and then we stop and then we switch. And then we do that for a little bit, then we stop and then we switch. So like, the reason why we as women feel like I just can't do this for the rest of my life, you know, like I feel like I can do this, but I can add a little bit of this and I can do that. It's like, if all girls and women knew that it's so part of our nature to feel, okay, I'm done with this, I can put it down and move to something else, rather than, you know, the society telling us that we're a failure because we didn't stick to it, or we have too many, you know, projects going on or whatever. Like, just the difference of like a male psyche running the female psyche and controlling it is where we kind of clash with ourselves, right?
Totally.
Like, we're meant to like only do this for a while and stop. Even bleeding, you know, we're meant to bleed for some time and then we don't, and then that's okay. Like, we are meant to be cyclical beings. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. And
that's
thank you so much
perfect
for that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I look forward to like talking more and see what's of all this. And it's so great that all these women really like that. As women, we want to talk to each other about all this stuff. That's like the most
I agree. And so that's why I wanted to just start this conversation and like keep it going and like become an outlet maybe for women who, you know, for all of us women, and just maybe see if we can kind of find our path of like helping, you know, helping everyone kind of find that connection and that really deep understanding. And then also the two, like you were just talking about, the clashing thing, that was what you just said, was kind of almost cyclical, going back to what I originally talked about, which is that clash within me that was giving me anxiety. And so I think a lot of us women have anxiety, and I'd love to get down to the depths of why, because I think a lot of it is the clash of what we're taught versus what we have in our souls that is innate and there. So Andrea, go ahead and go. It was lovely to see you. Get back
So
on
nice to
Hawaii.
meet you,
We were
Andrea.
here in Hawaii. We have to get together. Okay.
Yes, we do. All right. Bye.
Bye. So, it's one of those things where I just kind of like, hello. Hello. Who is that? So it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like all those little things that I was taught, and everything, those were the things that made me feel the opposite of powerful. It made me feel like it wasn't my place to have power. And the truth is that no matter what God you believe in, no matter what you believe, my thought process is on it, whether you call it universe, source, divine, I don't really care. My thought process on it is that we were uniquely made with our own power and to stand in it. And yet I'm clashing every day in this power versus no power versus, and I really believe that there's actually, I'm kind of watching, and I don't know if you guys have been, but I'm watching, I feel like women are kind of taking their power back right now. And I feel like even with the big things that have come up that have kind of secured us not to have it, right? Or I shouldn't say secured it, but tried to make it so that we don't have it. I feel like there's this thing where I think that we're kind of reaching out in a different way and just recognizing, part of it is just recognizing, right?
Well, we've spent so long in the masculine, and it's not, I always feel like people make this well, if you're supporting the feminine and you're not for the masculine, and it's not about that.
No.
We were meant to balance each other out. Yes, a lot of men are very linear, this is my job, I'm doing my job. And women are very, what's that? Men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti book, and it's really old, but it's that whole idea that women's lives are all entangled and enmeshed with each other, whereas most men compartmentalize everything, and we tend to be different. But it's that learning how to balance that masculine and that feminine, because we've spent so long in the masculine that women undervalued that feminine part and that what we bring to the table. And I think that for some people that really thrive and benefit from that masculine world are very afraid to see women in their power, because we can do some amazing things, but that's not to negate what men are doing. It's to complement each other. And I feel like we aren't doing that right now. It's either this or this. And it's like, no, why can't it be this?
Yeah. And you can even take away male versus female. We all have masculine and feminine energy in us. Yes. And it's really where we kind of like, I tend to, because I always thought that this is how you had to become successful. I think I sit way too much in my masculine quite often. But really like, the feminine part of me would be able to do so much more if I could just allow it to exist, Yeah. But I never connected that to actually having success. The feminine idea, to me, there was something that drew the line of that can't be successful.
Yeah. Why does it have to be a masculine trait or a feminine? Like why do we categorize those things? Why can they not be fluid with each other?
Yes.
Like, why can't I do these things that are considered masculine or opposite? And why are we not combining those things?
Yeah.
Because when you're little, it's laid out for you. It's like, this is your path. Yeah. Welcome to being a female, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I do feel, like kind of on our last little note, the whole last question was, how do you feel women play a role in or against this confidence or this insecurity? And it's interesting because we've talked about it a little bit, and I feel like I feel like our whole goal is to kind of like recognize that to give anyone that power of telling us that of like making us feel insecure versus like confident, right? That's our biggest issue, right? Is giving other people the power, whether they're men or women, is giving other people the power to make us feel that way, you know? And I have been, as a people pleaser, I have struggled with that so much. I think most of us are, right? Like we just have such fear of human, right? Fear.
I don't want to let people down.
Yeah. Yeah. And that comes from us just being that rule follower as we grow up, and, you know, maybe the way we're disciplined, and maybe the way, you know, we weren't allowed to be a little bit more wild and free and everything. And so it taught us that, well, no, stop, or you're going to embarrass me in front of, that was a lot of my
I grew up in a household like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so interesting. This conversation is so great because it is something that I feel like we need to talk about more. And it's like, we have all these things that, you know, happen in our lives, and then we make them mean certain things just naturally. Right. And then, but then all of a sudden we get to this point where that whole world that we created of what things mean, like, it really doesn't serve us. It really does take us out of the game. And so, and there's some great work by Alison Armstrong on sort of the instinctual nature, like men and women. I love all of that stuff too, is like just biologically how we are, and that comes into play, but then also like just things that we experience that then, you know, we have to be a certain way to survive.
Yeah.
And so, then we get to a point, it's like, then it just limits us. It is us playing small. And I really got that for myself, you know, at one point when I wanted to play a bigger game, and I was bumping up against that. Yeah. Like really big time. And I was running a company.
Yeah. And you were bumping up against people who, you know, some people who believed that you could do it and some people that you didn't.
Yeah.
Who do you listen to?
And my own, and what I saw that I could do and I couldn't do based on what I was told previously. Yeah.
Well, you ladies are absolute badasses, and I'm so glad that we got to like do this. And I honestly, I want to keep this conversation going. I seriously do. So if you wouldn't mind, make sure to kind of like write something down of questions that that kind of come to you about, you know, women and what we kind of need to kind of, you know, just kind of pinpoint and everything like that. Really, I just want to kind of, again, my whole goal is I've been struggling with anxiety for so long within my soul because of that imbalance. And I've had to work really hard over the last several years to kind of get out of that. And it took some really deep emotional work that I was not prepared for and I did not expect. But at the same time, I do know that I'm here on the other side of it, kind of going, okay, so let's do this with everybody. Let's get all of these women, including our daughters, including the people we lead, Priscilla, like you, it's important to, you know, get to that place where we know we can like intuitively kind of understand what's going on with each other, but then also we're schooled enough with the knowledge of why certain things are happening so that we can kind of help, you know, or even just help ourselves. Right.
I mean, imagine a world where everyone's walking in their power, in their best selves. Right. I mean, it's the dream.
I know. It's the dream. It's the dream. And I have a dream. I have an absolute dream for it. Well, thank you ladies so much. I appreciate it. I am so happy to have had you guys on here. Again, like I said, we will be doing this again, and anybody who's listening, please share it on, you know, any social media or anything like that. And yeah, we will be back to discuss more, I promise. So thank you, ladies. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop recording, and you guys can just stay on for 1 second, and so we can say goodbye. Okay, so I am going to stop recording. Is this the one? Yeah.